In 2005, a waterproof camera was pulled from the bottom of the Indian Ocean. The lens was cracked, the strap was broken, the body was covered in sand and coral. But when investigators opened it, the photos inside were perfectly intact. A father holding his daughter on his shoulders, a mother laughing at something off camera, two boys building a sandcastle, a grandmother sitting in the shade, watching them all. They were smiling. Every single one of them was smiling. None of them survived. These photos were taken on December 25th, 2004. The next morning, everything was gone. This is the story of the last normal day before one of the deadliest disasters in human history. And nobody has ever told it like this. December 25th, 2004. Christmas Day. Around the world, people were waking up to open presents, warm kitchens, and family gathered around tables. In New York, snow was falling. In London, families were watching the Queen's annual speech on television. In Australia, people were firing up backyard barbecues. But in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and India, thousands of tourists were doing something entirely different. They were at the beach, and why wouldn't they be? The weather was perfect. Khao Lak, Thailand, a resort town built for relaxation. White sand, turquoise water, palm trees that bent gently in the warm breeze. Hotel pools were already full by 9 in the morning. Children were racing into the surf. Couples were ordering breakfast on open-air terraces overlooking the sea. It was, by every measure, a perfect day. A Swedish family, a mother, father, and 3 children, had just arrived 2 days earlier. It was their first trip to Asia. The children had never seen water so blue. The father later described that morning in an interview. He said, "We woke up and the kids were already at the window, looking at the ocean. My youngest daughter, she was 6, she kept saying, 'Dad, the water is calling us. Let's go.' They went." On the beaches of Phuket, another story was unfolding. Thousands of tourists from Europe, America, Australia, Japan. They had come for the holiday. Hotels were fully booked. Some resorts had turned away guests days earlier because there was simply no room. A British couple, married for 34 years, had chosen Thailand for their anniversary. They had never traveled this far before. The husband had booked it as a surprise, 9 months in advance. That morning, she wrote in her journal, "Woke to the most beautiful sunrise I have ever seen. Richard made me coffee from the little machine in the room. We sat on the balcony and didn't say anything for a long time. We didn't need to. I thought, this is it. This is the happiest I have ever been." She survived. He did not. In Sri Lanka, on the southern coast, a passenger train was being prepared for its morning journey. The Queen of the Sea, running along the scenic coastline. The conductor was checking tickets. The engineer was going through his checklist. A young woman was sitting by the window, watching the ocean, thinking about nothing in particular. None of them knew what was coming. And here's the thing that is almost impossible to understand about disasters of this scale. There were warning systems in place. There were people who knew the danger. There was a signal, a massive, unmistakable signal, that something catastrophic was about to happen. And almost nobody heard it. On December 26, 2004, at exactly 7:58 in the morning, the ocean floor moved, not by a little, not by a tremor you might feel and forget, but by 15 meters, in some places 20 meters. In a geological instant, a section of the ocean floor the size of California lurched upward with a force so violent it literally changed the shape of the Earth. Scientists would later calculate that this single event released more energy than all of the world's earthquakes combined over the entire previous year. It registered as a 9.1 on the Richter scale, one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in human history. The epicenter was off the coast of northern Sumatra, Indonesia, deep beneath the Indian Ocean. Almost nobody on the surface felt it directly. In the places that would be hardest hit, the beaches of Thailand, the coast of Sri Lanka, the shores of India, people felt nothing, not a tremor, not a sound. But beneath the water, something was already moving. When the ocean floor shifted, it displaced trillions of gallons of water in every direction. That displaced water had to go somewhere, and it was going at the speed of a commercial airplane toward the coastlines where thousands of people were eating Christmas breakfast. Here is what most people don't know about tsunamis in deep ocean. You cannot see them. In open water, a tsunami is barely 3 feet tall. It moves so fast and covers such an enormous area that if you were on a boat in the middle of the Indian Ocean at that moment, you would have felt nothing, a slight rise and fall, nothing more. The danger only begins when the wave reaches shallow water, when the ocean floor rises up beneath it, compressing all of that energy upward. The wave slows down. It grows, and it grows, and it grows. By the time it reaches the coastline, a wave that was 3 feet tall in the open ocean can become 100 feet of moving water. In 2004, the Indian Ocean had no tsunami warning system. The Pacific Ocean had one, built after the 1946 Alaska earthquake sent a tsunami crashing into Hawaii. But the Indian Ocean? There were no sensors, no buoys, no network, no alarm. There was, however, a seismograph station in Hawaii that detected the earthquake within minutes. The scientists on duty looked at their readings and felt their blood run cold. An earthquake of this magnitude in this location almost certainly meant a tsunami was coming. They began making calls. The first call went out at 8:07 m, just 9 minutes after the earthquake struck. But here is where the story becomes almost unbearable to tell. The warning center had no contact list for Indian Ocean nations. They had no protocol. They had no direct line to any emergency management authority in Thailand, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, or India. They called the U.S. Embassy in Thailand. They called the U.S. Embassy in Sri Lanka. They called anyone they could think of. The warnings sat in inboxes. They sat on the desks of officials who weren't sure what to make of them. They traveled through layers of bureaucracy that had no system for passing them on. On the beaches of Thailand, December 26th was just beginning, and the ocean was already on its way. Let's go back to Christmas Day, December 25th, because what happened the day before matters. Not because it was dramatic, not because there were signs everyone missed, but because it was so completely, heartbreakingly ordinary. In Khao Lak, a German family was celebrating Christmas the way that felt strangest and most wonderful to them, on a beach, in swimming clothes, eating fruit they had never tasted before. The father had brought a small Christmas ornament in his suitcase, a tradition. Every year, wherever they were, they hung it somewhere. That year, he hung it from a palm tree branch outside their bungalow. His daughter, who was 9 years old, thought this was the funniest thing she had ever seen. She took a photo of it. That photo survived. She survived too, by the thinnest of margins. Her parents did not. In Phuket, a young Thai man was working his shift at a beachside restaurant. He was 22. He had been saving money to open his own place one day. Christmas was the busiest time of year. Tourists everywhere, big tips, long hours. That evening, tourists left him a tip larger than his entire week's salary. He called his mother to tell her about it. She told him to come home soon. He said he would. He survived. In Sri Lanka, a fisherman had been going out before sunrise every morning for 20 years. December 26th, he woke before his alarm. His wife asked him to stay. She said she had a feeling. He almost did. He went anyway. He was already far enough offshore when the wave hit the coast. He watched from his boat as the world he knew disappeared behind a wall of water. His house, his neighbors, the festival decorations still strung between the trees. He survived. He lost 11 members of his family. Back in Thailand, a British girl named Tilly Smith was on the beach with her parents on the morning of December 26th. She was 10 years old, and 2 weeks earlier, in school in England, her geography teacher had shown her class a video about tsunamis. She remembered one specific detail. Before a tsunami hits, the ocean does something strange. It pulls back. The waterline recedes dramatically, sometimes hundreds of meters, as the wave draws water toward itself. At around 9:30 in the morning, Tilly looked out at the ocean, and the water was going out. She started screaming. Her parents thought she was overreacting, but she kept screaming, "Tsunami, tsunami," and she wouldn't stop, and finally her father grabbed her and they ran, and they shouted at everyone around them to run. Most of the people on that beach ran. That beach was one of the few in the region where almost nobody died, because of a 10-year-old girl who had paid attention in geography class. But most beaches had no Tilly Smith. Most beaches had no warning at all. On the beaches where nobody ran, where people stood at the waterline watching the ocean recede with curiosity and wonder, the wave arrived. And everything that had been normal, everything that had been Christmas morning and family photographs and restaurant tips and anniversary journals, was gone. At 9:55 a.m. on December 26, 2004, the first wave struck the coast of Aceh province in Indonesia. It was not one wave. It was a series. Some accounts describe as many as 7 distinct surges over the course of nearly 2 hours. The first wave arrived, then the water pulled back. Then the second wave, larger, came. People who survived the first wave sometimes ran back toward the beach to look for family members, to retrieve belongings. Not knowing the worst was still coming. In Thailand, the waves reached the coastline at approximately 10 a.m. In Sri Lanka and India, the waves arrived almost 2 hours after the earthquake, 2 hours in which a warning could have reached every single person on those coastlines. Could have. But didn't. The Queen of the Sea passenger train was struck by the wave at a low-lying section of coastline. The water lifted the carriages completely off the tracks. Over 1,700 people were killed in a single moment. It remains the deadliest train disaster in recorded history. In Somalia, on the eastern coast of Africa, 5,000 kilometers from the epicenter, waves 10 feet high killed over 200 people who had never heard of a place called Sumatra. The final death toll would take months to calculate, and even then, the numbers felt impossible. 227,898 people in 14 countries. For weeks afterward, the beaches were searched. Bodies were found miles inland. Cameras were found at the bottom of the sea. Shoes, passports, stuffed animals, and journals. Journals written on Christmas Day, the last normal day. One entry, recovered from a waterlogged notebook, reads simply, "Today was wonderful. The children are happy. The weather is warm. I think we will come back here someday. I think this will become one of our places, one of the places that means something to us." There is no December 26th entry. In the months and years that followed, the world did something it should have done decades earlier. It built a warning system. The Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System was established in 2006. Seismic monitoring stations were placed throughout the region. Deep ocean buoys were anchored at key locations, designed to detect an incoming tsunami and transmit data to warning centers within minutes. Scientists estimate that if this system had existed in 2004, it could have given coastal communities in Thailand and Sri Lanka up to 2 hours of warning. 2 hours. The wave took 2 hours to reach Sri Lanka. If the warning had existed, Every single person on those beaches could have been safe. Instead, there was nothing. In Banda Aceh, the city closest to the epicenter, 60% of the population was killed or displaced. Today, the city has a museum, not because of its architecture or collection, but because of what it contains: the ordinary things of ordinary lives: shoes, bicycles, a child's school bag, a wedding ring found in the mud 6 months after the disaster, still on the finger of its owner. The city also has a ship. A large fishing vessel weighing 2,600 tons was carried by the wave 2 miles inland. It came to rest on top of several houses. The ship is still there. The government decided to leave it as a monument, a warning, a reminder. Children play near it now. Tourists photograph it, and every person who stands beneath its enormous hull and tries to understand how it got there walks away having felt something they cannot quite name, a kind of vertigo, the feeling of understanding, just for a moment, how small we are. Of the hundreds of thousands who died, there are also hundreds of thousands who lived. Tilly Smith, the 10-year-old girl who warned the beach in Phuket, was invited to speak at the United Nations. She has spent much of her adult life advocating for tsunami education in schools around the world. Because of one geography lesson, one teacher who showed a video, one girl who was paying attention. The fisherman in Sri Lanka has been asked many times how he lives with what he saw that morning. He always gives the same answer: you go back to the water. What else can you do? The ocean did not choose us. It was just the ocean. He still fishes. He goes out every morning before sunrise. December 25th, 2004 was a perfect day. The weather was warm. The water was blue. A father hung a Christmas ornament on a palm tree branch. A woman wrote in her journal that she had found one of her places. The fisherman received a tip that made him call his mother. Ordinary moments, the kind that make up a life, the kind we never think to remember, because we assume there will always be more of them. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami is the deadliest natural disaster of the 21st century. 227,898 people, 14 countries, a wave that started at the bottom of the ocean and changed the world. But it is not only a story about a disaster. It is a story about the day before, the last normal morning, the last coffee on the balcony, the last photograph of a family that would not survive to see it developed. It is a story about how quickly ordinary becomes extraordinary, and how the distance between a perfect day and a catastrophe can be measured in hours. The warning system exists now. The sirens are real. The evacuation routes are marked. But the most important warning system of all is this. Remember December 25th, 2004. Remember that ordinary day, and hold your ordinary days a little more carefully, because sometimes you don't know it's the last one until it is.